G'day all, welcome to A Deeper Look. My name's Jonathan, and today we'll be discussing An American Werewolf in London and the fact that werewolves are 100% real. And I can prove it. Nah, just kidding. We're actually talking about lying. See what I did there? Alright, just a little jest there. We're actually going to be talking about the film The Invention of Lying by Ricky Gervais. So The Invention of Lying is, I guess, in a way a fable or a parable kind of movie, or at least it's intended that way, that explores the idea, what if you were the only person in the world who knew how to lie? And I guess in many ways there would be a lot of advantage in being the only person who knows how to lie. And the movie makes that pretty clear. It's a bit of a shame. It kind of derails itself by becoming somewhat of a critique on religion, or perhaps even an attack on religion, which of course as a non-religious person didn't bother me particularly, but I know it's a bugbear of Ricky Gervais's, and I kind of wish he hadn't gone that route. I wish the movie had stuck more to the exploration of the benefits of lying, as it did, and it's, I guess, up to about the halfway point. It's an interesting premise. It's one way to go with the movie. However, I think it could have been a little bit more interesting had it gone another way. I think more along the lines of, say, the Illuminati or whatever. They weren't the first, obviously, to invent lying. However, they certainly were one of the earlier groups and one of the most successful groups to use lying in a way to manipulate people effectively in extremely large groups. They were also, I guess, one of the first groups to ever formalize lying as a methodology to manipulate people. And as you can see on the screen here, another famous historical figure who was pretty big on lies was Adolf Hitler. And I don't know if this is a real quote, but it's such a good one, I'm going to put it up anyway. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. The essence of what of this quote, whether it's actually attributable to Adolf Hitler or someone else, is essentially what we're talking about today. The bigger the lie, the more likely people are to believe it. I guess we don't need Hitler to give us this quote. We could turn to an equally significant historical figure, George Costanza, when he famously said to Jerry Seinfeld,
Jerry, just remember, it's not a lie if you believe it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite lines from Seinfeld, because I guess in a sense it's true. The episode deals with Jerry having to do a lie detector test, I believe, and essentially if a lie detector is measuring signs, physical signs that you're actually telling a lie, if you believe you're telling the truth, you can defeat the lie detector test.
You guys still use these?
Yeah. You got a problem with that?
Yeah, because they don't work at all. Humans are complicated. The truth isn't something you can just detect with a machine.
Oh, yeah? And what's it detecting, buddy?
Heartbeat, blood pressure, breathing, sweat.
Dirty, sweaty liars.
But why would being sweaty necessarily mean you're lying? Hell, it could just mean you're doing CrossFit.
There's a science to lying, and it's an interesting one. And it's in the scientific realm, it's sort of considered just a natural human trait and not so much of a negative. But if you ask people, what are the worst crimes that one human can commit against another? The first non-violent crime that people will list is lying. Nobody likes to be lied to. And, quite often you'll see in movies or hear in real life, if someone's husband cheats on the wife will often say something along the lines of,
It's not that he might have slept with another woman. It's that he might not tell me.
It's betrayal that really upsets us, not necessarily, someone went and got physical pleasure. And at the risk of harping on human sexual response too much, it's not a distinctively human trait to lie, because nature will lie to us to get its own end result. Nature's kind of deceptive in the sense that it gives us false desires or indirect desires to get us to conform to the behavior that it wants. For example, a horny guy isn't sitting around thinking about having a toddler. The horny guy is just thinking about the act of sex itself. Personally, I think it would be nice for nature to be a little bit more honest with us and give us the desire for the consequence of what we're doing rather than just the act itself. I guess it's the same thing with hunger. You want to fill your belly, but it doesn't give you a desire for nutrition. So a lot of people are tricked into having very poor diets as a result of not necessarily craving the correct thing. And as you can tell from my own physique, I have fallen into this trap myself. So, I think it's fairly universal. It's almost a flaw in human consciousness. And you look around the world today and you've got the fake news epidemic, and seemingly everything's just turned upside down and going insane. I don't know about you guys, but when I get on the internet and I start looking into alternative media and mainstream media and trying to work out what's really happening in the world, finding the truth is getting harder and harder every single day.
You can't handle the truth!
And when you think about it, even our very values and morals and ethics are determined in a sense by manipulation and lies. If you look at how the advertising industry evolved, from the days of Edward Bernays, you'll find that was very deliberately a manipulation to transform our society from a needs-based culture to a desire-based culture. And there's a video that expresses that very well by High Impact Flicks.
Nearly 100 years ago, our global mania for consumption was unleashed by the malevolent brilliance of Edward Bernays, also known as the father of public relations. Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew and used his uncle's insights into the subconscious to develop his new methods of mind control designed to create the modern American consumer. Business partner Paul Mazur said, "We must shift America from a needs to a desires culture. People must be trained to desire, to want new things, even before the old have been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality. Man's desires must overshadow his needs."
And he goes on to talk about how he championed smoking in women and all sorts of propaganda campaigns. So, marketing and advertising by their very nature are dishonest. Sure, you could just list the features of products and services and hope that people come and throw money at you. But at the end of the day, it's evolved way beyond that, to the point where we're being very, very heavy-handedly manipulated into buying products and services that we don't actually need. We can go back to the Adolf Hitler quote. And, a lot of people focus on making the lie big because that's the sensational part of the quote. But it also has the component of keep saying it, so repetition. Now, repetition is one of the main tenets of mind control. A lot of people think of mind control as this mystical, almost magical, hypnotic thing where you can click your fingers and make someone do something. But a lot of mind control is very, very small things. And I think it was Fritz Springmeier who said in an interview once that you don't need one technique for mind control. What you need is 100 tiny little techniques all being utilized at once.
Mind control is not one item. What makes it so powerful is that they're taking every known technique of controlling a person and they're putting it into a recipe, a group package that's very sophisticatedly engineered.
Full spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. So, as kids, we used to do a real simple type of mind control. We'd grab someone's arm and twist it behind their back and say uncle, Well, they also use physical threats against people. And if you start to think about each one of these types of mind control, in themselves, they're almost sufficient to control a person. But if you add them together in a sophisticated package, that group package locks the person in.
A good example of this is if you're walking down the street and you've got someone coming the opposite way. If you can walk in such a way to look confident or maybe a little bit crazy, then they'll swerve to get out of your way. Is that magic? Is that mind control? Well, yes, in a sense it is. And if I can do that and combine it with a number of other techniques, perhaps I can get even stronger results. In fact, maybe the results compound exponentially to the point where people will become a lot more pliable to your will. I think any student of history worth their mettle will probably end up concluding that all the leaders of history have had a component of lying in their rise to power. Obviously, we've mentioned Hitler, but you can probably go through pretty much every political leader that's ever existed and find ways in which they've lied to the public or to other people, other countries, other leaders to get into their position. And sad as it is, it seems that the more people lie, the more they're likely to rise to the top. And that's as much the flaw of the rest of us as it is the people who are making the lies, where we tend to be perhaps not critical enough, and we tend to believe people when they say things that we want to believe. Generally, what people do is they just pick a source that they decide to trust, and they continue to trust that source, sometimes even in the face of evidence to the contrary. For most people, that's the mainstream media. Now, the mainstream media, I think we can pretty much 100% prove, has at least lied once. You know, you can download footage of an old CNN news story where the reporters seem to be pretending that they're involved in some sort of chemical attack.
And there's a cloud of something. It looks like it might have been an explosion, a cloud. I'd say it was... My apologies for please putting on the gas mask. There hasn't been any gas dropped here.
I can't tell again whether that's true or whether that's false, and it gets to the point where you start to wonder what is truth anyway. Is it completely subjective? But the point is, it's very hard to find sources that you can trust 100% of the time. Best case scenario, you'll trust someone who will eventually make a mistake and give you information that's poor. And I think we all have inside us this concept of cognitive dissonance. We reject information that doesn't agree with parts of the worldview that we have that we're invested in, our core beliefs. Because I think we're very protective of this sort of persona that we build up over time, over our lifetimes, where, we're a sum of all of our experiences. And in a sense, we're a sum of all our beliefs, or the beliefs that those experiences have created inside us. And to undermine those core beliefs, especially ones that we've had for a long time, is a painful act. And I've read that psychologically speaking, in order to let go of a belief is essentially the same process that you go through when someone close to you dies. You have to go through all the stages of grief to say goodbye to that belief and embrace the new information. So we know politicians lie, we know corporations lie. Advertising itself is completely predicated on lies, or at least manipulation, using techniques and understanding of human behavior against us. I've often wondered if the cure to the dishonesty, the inherent dishonesty in corporatism or crony capitalism or whatever you want to call it, is to force corporations to have 100% transparency. A lot of people use the term vote with your feet, and that seems to imply that you can just pick and choose what products you buy or what activities you involve yourself in, basically where you spend your money, in order to support corporations that you believe are ethical and in line with what you want for the world. However, without transparency, how can you ever do that? So in a lot of ways, transparency, as in the lack of lying, is the answer to the corporate conundrum. But then there's a negative side to it as well. I believe in transparency, I believe in not lying, but I also believe in privacy. So how can you have both? There's a particularly disturbing movie that illustrates this point really well called The Circle. The first 2/3 of this movie were actually quite fascinating. And I just wanted to play a clip from there that's, I don't know how you read this, but I certainly read this as a little bit chilling.
In the interest of sharing everything she can with the world, May has some news.
From now on, I'll be wearing a modified sea change camera at all times. I'm going fully transparent.
The question, I guess, that this movie asks really well without particularly answering is, how far could you possibly go with transparency? What if the entire world was 100% transparent? We've obviously evolved to fear the whole Big Brother 1984 scenario. But if you had that scenario, would that actually lead to better behavior, more honest behavior, and more ethical behavior? It's a huge question. How much are you willing to give up in order to corral people into behaving themselves? We live in a new age of, I guess, what you could call information consumerism. Like the Industrial Revolution led to advertising, which led to us becoming a consumerist society or a consumer-driven society. Information has evolved in a similar way, and now we're just bombarded with top 5 lists, top 10 lists, garbage, article after article, podcast after podcast, and yes, video after video, and I don't count this one as immune, that really just doesn't need to exist. Information is repackaged and remixed and represented in a different format as if it's saying something new. But at the end of the day, it's not saying anything particularly insightful or new. And the motivation to create the content in the first place, in many cases, is no longer to inform or to create thought-provoking material. It's simply just to sell, just to keep you interested, to keep you engaged. Engagement is the only real motivation behind most of the content that you'll see on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and anywhere else online that you can think of. And maybe that's not such a bad thing, at least we not short of entertainment, at least we've always got something to do, and in some ways it's better to be informed by what you're using as entertainment than to simply just be entertained. But the problem is that bad information does not get excluded from this process. So the stuff that we get saturated with on a daily basis isn't necessarily true. It's not necessarily good information, and it's not necessarily beneficial or even truthful. They want your eyeballs, they want your engagement, and it simply just does not matter if the information they're using to get that is accurate or truthful or even useful. If you simply feel informed upon consuming the content, well, that's a job well done by the content creator. Big pat on the back. They'll use your tendencies towards cognitive bias and cognitive dissonance and all sorts of psychological principles against you in order to keep you engaged. As long as you're willing to watch that 30-second pre-roll ad, click on the pop-ups and the banners and all of the junk that they'll throw up in front of you, then, mission accomplished. This is the age of information consumerism. And I guess that's why now we find ourselves in what I'd call a fake news culture, where news sources and information sources that used to be well respected and easy to trust are now subject to skepticism and scrutiny. It's up to us to evolve our critical thinking skills and our research abilities and to change the way that we consume information. Don't expect that the information that comes to you and pops up in little windows in your web browser are going to provide you with the truth. Seek out your own information and seek it out on your own terms. Otherwise, we'll just fall victim to what the powers that shouldn't be want us to think and feel. So if there is really such a thing as expanding or raising our own consciousness, then surely there has never been a more important time to make that our number one priority. Is holding in a fart inherently dishonest? Yeah, I guess it is. Is it a bad form of dishonesty? No, hold in the farts, please. I don't want to smell them. I want to hear them. No, I want to hear them. Farts are always funny. Just fart, let it go. Let it go. But don't piss on the floor or anything. Is it a slippery slope towards pissing on the floor? I don't know anymore.